Hello everyone, welcome to Short and Steam with Rome Schmo. I'm Aaliyah from Rome and Schmomance, where we talk about all things romance books. Yeah, I recorded this episode back in February, and I never got around to editing it and getting it out there. And last week I just posted up a life update I'm just currently reading, so I'm plugging this one back in and sharing it, doing a little bit of editing, so the timeline's a little bit off, but it's still pretty easy to follow along. So here we go. Today we kind of decided, I decided yesterday that I wanted to just do a electronics-free day for everyone. This mostly came out of frustration with two of my boys, because they were just being over the top with everything. So we had an electronics free day today, which was actually really nice. It rained all day, which kind of made me tired, but I didn't mind. I got to sit on the couch and read. I read a whole book, which was nice because I actually reached out and I had to go into my bookshelf to find a book that has been sitting on there for a while and needs to be read. So I picked one up and I just really liked it. So I'm really excited and more motivated to get back into my physical TBR that I have. It was a little bit rough for my kids because they just wanted to watch movies and TVs, but they did great, actually. We had all the toys set out. We did some crafts. We did some puzzles with them. I ran out in the rain with them. We were jumping in puddles. It was great. She had a pretty good day, and I'm wiped out. I'm tired, honestly. Today, I thought it would be a fun topic to talk about today would be about DNFs, or just books you just don't finish, and reasons why I DNF books that I do. So I actually haven't been doing a good job of DNFing. I need to, but since I have so many arcs and just focusing on what I have and my past arcs that I have, I've been trying not to DNF as much, but kind of leaning back into just DNFing if it's not working for me, which, it goes for a lot of reasons. My reasons usually is that the book is just not working, or it takes me several days to get through a book. I usually can finish a book in like a day and a half to 2 days. If we're going past a week, I probably should DNF, but most of the case, I usually just push it through and keep reading. Another reason why I usually DNF a book is if I'm going through blurbs and just how books are marketed, and their market is as something specific, I will go into that book expecting that, and if I don't get it, I usually DNF right away and get super frustrated. If you're a romance reader, you probably see this a lot in the books that we read, to each their own, but if you're going to sell me a romance book, I will have very high expectations of how I want that book to be. And saying you don't want it to have a HEA or a happily ever after, then that is an absolutely big no for me. I'm currently looking at my StoryGraph to see the books that I've DNF'd over the past few years, and one of my favorite things about StoryGraph is that you can kind of just type in the explanation of why you DNF'd a book. So I'm reading them, and a lot of it is mostly vibes, I guess. At least since 2003, they've mostly been vibes. Just wasn't feeling it. I was getting a little bored. The characters are kind of falling flat for me. And that was usually why I DNF books, which, teach them. I think that's a perfectly valid reason. I know someone that just instantly stopped reading because of a certain name, which I totally get that, especially if it's like your child's name or a sibling's name, parent's name. Totally get that. Another main one for me is misrepresentation. Like you say, you'll have characters that are BIPOC rap, but you're just touching the surface of it and not really diving deeper into who they are. I'm probably gonna DNF it. My newest thing that has been bugging me is I've been reading more fantasy romances lately, which, they're great. I do enjoy them. I'm still working up to understanding all the world building, and that's usually something that can go over my head sometimes. But with fantasy romances and just how they're written, I get so taken out of a book when there is a ton of modern dialogue in it. There was a recent audiobook that I read that I DNF about halfway through, and I tried, and I was like, maybe if it's like a one-time thing and they mention once, it's fine. I could probably give it a pass, but it kept coming up more than once, and it was kind of ridiculous, and I wasn't there for it. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't think there should be any modern dialogue in fantasy romances. I guess it's the way you said it, but the way that this world was set, definitely no, didn't work. One of my biggest one is I don't like to read about anything super problematic in a book. I do have some triggers that I don't like to read about. And obviously, if any of those pop up, I will just DNF right away. Don't need to explain it. Racism, of course, definitely not going to keep reading that one. I know a lot of authors write it in because they're like, oh, this happens. I agree. Yes, we all know that racism happens all the time, but don't have to read about it all the time, especially in books. Like, you don't have to, in my opinion. You don't always have to write it in a book, especially in a romance setting. So yeah, I'm definitely curious. What are some of your reasons of why you DNF a book? I think every reason's valid. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to go about how you DNF it. It's totally up to you as a reader. And then I quickly wanted to jump in tropes. I know tropes are a huge thing. And I know there's just like a lot of discourse around it on how books are marketed. And they're like, oh, it's very tropey. I don't mind tropes. I feel like some authors don't write them as well as other ones, which, that's fine. That's just my personal opinion about it. But there are definitely tropes that I don't like to read about, but there's also tropes that I love reading about. So I'm kind of curious on what tropes are your favorite. I always struggled with reading friends to lovers. I just found they usually fell flat for me, and I would avoid them or I would try them because somebody recommended a book to me. But this year, I think we're taking a turn around friends to lovers because I've read a few that I've actually really liked, and they mostly been recommendations from a couple people that I actually trust their recommendations. So they've been going really well for me this year. So I might be turning a corner with that one. One that I actually used to hate reading was cheating romances. I know this is a big one, but probably over the past 2 years, I've loved them. I really enjoy reading them. And obviously, in reality, no, I would not be the one that would be very forgiving if someone cheated me. But my big thing is I look for the grovel. Groveling is always my big one. I want to see how the character that was cheating grovels. And obviously, I like to read it. If it was worth it, do I find them redeemable? Obviously, everyone's going to be like, no, they're not. Totally get that. But for the sake of fiction and romance books that I read, I'm curious if they are. And I would say the most that I've read, they're not really redeemable. I'll definitely be doing a separate podcast about this because I started doing a little research project. I grabbed some recs from friends off of different social media platforms for betrayal romances that I read, and I'll definitely be sharing what I discovered about those. I have some recs if anyone's interested. I know that these are usually, I call these our hard sell recs. These are hard recs for people because they just don't like reading about cheating. But if anyone's interested, I will make a list of books you can read. A lot of them are actually on Wattpad, which Wattpad gets a lot of hate. And yeah, I get it, but you gotta think about it. A lot of authors that you read now started on there, and they are now big sellers on all these lists now. And if you are pretty good at searching around in there or just know how to navigate it, there's actually some really good writing in there. And I found a few that I really love reading from, so I'll be sharing those too. Another trope I'm not really big on is brother's best friend or best friend's sibling, whatever. For me, the main reason why is just I never understood why. One, it was like so forbidden. Two, there's just a little bit over the top behavior about not letting like their sibling know that they're dating, and it's like such a huge thing. So they're like dating in secret, and it just builds up this drama and tension. I was never a fan of that because most cases I'm like, you're both adults and you guys can do whatever you want, and your brother, your sibling, whatever, can deal with it. And then it ends up being this whole big part of the book, which I'm really not a big fan of because I feel like it takes away from the romance a little bit and then usually leads into a third act breakup, which I know is another topic, and everyone's like, who cares about them? It all depends on how it's written for me. But this is yet another trope where it's turning a corner for me. There's been a couple books this year that I've read that has this trope, and they were really well written, and there's just no drama. There wasn't any issues. Everybody involved were adults about it, which is, I think, my preference now. So I want books like that. My top favorites tropes to read from are second chances. Those are my absolutely favorite ones. I just love to see main characters that used to be together, obviously broken up for whatever reason. I love learning about the why and what happened in between. I don't really have big hangups what happens the time that they're not together. I know a lot of people like have their own thing about what happens to that specific character when they're not together. I usually don't care. I'm like, whatever. They can do whatever they want. If they're not sleeping around with other people, whatever. I personally don't care. It doesn't put a lot of weight on what I think about this book. So second chances are my favorite. I love seeing them get back together. It's one of my favorite things. And I think the biggest reason why is I'm not a super forgiving person. I'm not really big on second chances, but I love reading about them. I also talk about this with my husband all the time, and I'm like, if you ever did anything to me, I'm like, we're done. And he's like, yeah, we'll see. And I was like, yeah, we're done. But I mean, obviously, I have not been in that position. I hope I never will be. I'm not really big on second chances in real life. Yeah, I'm really curious to hear what your reasons for DNFing a book and what your favorite tropes are, or maybe your least favorite tropes. Would love to know them. Feel free to leave comments below. And let me know. Hope everyone has a great rest of the week. Kids are on spring break, so we're hoping to take a road trip somewhere this weekend. We have no idea. We have nothing booked yet, but we're going somewhere. So yeah, catch you next time. Happy reading.